So now we're ready for Chapter 6, How Cells Harvest Chemical Energy. I've got a little note here that, of course, I want you to read the chapter, but you can skim 6.7, 6.8, and 6.9. These are the sections that have more detailed information about the various reactions. We're mainly going to be looking at the big pictures. Okay, so cellular respiration is different from respiration that you may have heard of before, respiration meaning breathing in and out. Cellular respiration is when the cell has respiration. So it takes oxygen and it breaks down sugar and other food molecules and generates ATP. ATP is the energy currency of the cell. So ATP is like a quarter. And every time you go past the toll gate, you have to pay a quarter. ATP is the quarter. And also, a byproduct of cellular respiration is going to be heat. Okay, so let's get the very, very big picture. So in photosynthesis, some of the energy in the sunlight is captured by the chloroplast. Carbon dioxide and water are rearranged and produce sugar and oxygen. In cellular respiration, sugar is then broken down to carbon dioxide and water. During cellular respiration, the cell captures some of that released energy to make ATP. And over here we have it in pictorial form. So here we have the sunlight coming in. It strikes our chloroplast. It makes photosynthesis occur. We get sugars and other organic molecules, and O2 is made. That is then processed by the mitochondria to make ATP. Anytime you see that little starburst, that's going to be ATP. And these little arrows are signifying the heat that's given off. ATP powers most of the cellular work. The other byproduct from the mitochondria breaking down sugar is carbon dioxide and water. So it's a circle. The carbon dioxide and water is then used by the chloroplasts here with the sunlight to make sugar and oxygen. Cellular respiration is an exergonic or energy releasing process. The X here means exit. So heat is exiting, or energy in this case, it's exergonic. Energy is exiting. So it's an energy releasing process that transfers energy from glucose to form ATP. And it can produce as many as 32 molecules for each glucose molecule. It uses about 34% of the energy originally stored in the glucose, and the rest is lost as heat. This compares favorably to your automobile, which gets much less energy out of its fuel. So we can write this as a chemical equation. This hexagon here is glucose, C6H12O6, that's glucose, plus 6 oxygen molecules, go through many, many steps and produce 6 carbon dioxide molecules plus 6 water molecules plus ATP, the starburst again, and heat. I mentioned that this is not like breathing, but we use the same word, respiration. So how is your breathing related to cellular respiration. Breathing supplies the O2 for use in cellular respiration, and it removes carbon dioxide. So up here we're breathing, and in is going oxygen, and it goes to your lungs, and then oxygen goes to the blood, and then finally to the cells. Then from the cells, CO2 is removed. It goes to your lungs, and then you breathe out the CO2. So your body requires a continuous supply of energy. It takes about 10 million ATP molecules per second to power one active muscle cell. So that takes a lot of ATP. The balance of energy intake and expenditure is required to maintain a healthy weight. Cellular respiration provides the energy for bodily maintenance and for voluntary activities. During cellular respiration, electrons from hydrogen are going to be transferred to oxygen. This is the same reaction that occurs in a fire, with all the energy in a fire being released at once, making heat and light. But cellular respiration is going to provide a controlled descent. A stepping down an energy staircase. So the energy is released slowly so that part of it can be stored. During these transfers, we'll have NAD+ gaining an electron and becoming NADH. This compound, nicotinamide adenosine dinucleotide, is made from niacin. Okay. So this is our reaction. We're going to start with glucose and some oxygen, and we'll make carbon dioxide, water, and ATP and heat, which is basically just energy. The glucose is going to lose hydrogen atoms and become oxidized. So the glucose here, the carbons are associated with these hydrogens, but in carbon dioxide there are no hydrogens. The oxygen is going to gain the hydrogens. Here's the oxygen, and it gains hydrogens. Now the oxygen is associated with two hydrogens. So a hydrogen is composed of a proton, which we'll sometimes draw like this, a hydrogen ion, plus an electron. And we're going to be following the electrons as they go through this process. So below we have a generalized diagram of the same reaction that is above. We start with an organic fuel like glucose with its 12 hydrogens. It's oxidized to carbon dioxide with no hydrogens. So where do the hydrogens go? Well, we've got several hydrogens. Here we have two. We're just going to do two of them. We're going to get two hydrogen ions, which are the proton, and two electrons. The electrons are going to be passed to this NAD+, and when it gets its two electrons, these blue electrons right here, it'll become NADH, and there'll be a leftover proton. NADH is going to carry the electrons to where we have an electron transport chain. Your book is really good to keep everything very consistent. NADH will always be this kind of brown box with the two blue electrons. So you can always look for that. The electrons will always be little blue balls. So NADH will drop its electrons off at the top of this electron transport chain and regenerate the NAD plus and hydrogen ion or proton. So the two electrons will travel down this chain. This is what we're being passed from protein to protein. And as it's passed down that chain, we're going to find a way to generate ATP. At the end of the chain, the electrons are going to be passed to oxygen. And it'll add 2 protons from the environment, and we're going to make water. So that's where the electrons are going to end up at the end. And then those little blue balls, I said, are electrons. That's kind of an overview of the whole process.